One that I harp on all the time, but it's because I've seen it be the problem consistently again and again, is you have got to own, be responsible for, and understand your financial numbers. Doesn't mean you have to do your financial numbers. You need, however, to make sure you understand what's happening with payroll from a financial perspective. You need to understand what's happening with the business from a financial perspective.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You. Your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how. Over the last few weeks, Gwen and I have been talking about inventory. We've talked about payroll, we've talked about customer service, and if you've been listening closely, you have probably noticed something. Gwen never treated any of my questions as the actual problem, because after years of working with independent retailers, one of the things that she realized was true in her conversations at H&H Americas is that most retailers know exactly where the pain is. They know why they're frustrated. They know what's costing them way more than they can afford. They know what's keeping them up at night. But most of the time, they are trying to solve symptoms instead of root causes. And so today we're going to wrap up this series by talking about what Gwen believes is the real challenge facing many independent retailers and why this skill required to open a shop is not the same as the skill required to build a sustainable business. So Gwen, take it away. Drop your knowledge on us.
So, and this isn't true about everything, and of course, it's not true about everyone. I don't have my context matters. It's still packed, quite honestly. But but context matters here, because depending on who you are, you're going to have some different pieces. Mm-hmm. But the majority of the people in the world that decide they want to open any type of independent retail business do it because they love the thing that business supports, whether it's a craft, whether it's, they love clothes. So they want, and they love how they look in clothes and they're really good at helping other people look amazing in clothes. They love shoes. They love animal, I don't care what kind of independent retail it is. Very rarely, I can't even imagine a really good example, quite honestly, does someone say, yeah, I don't actually like shoes, but I'm going to open a shoe store. Like that, right. An independent shoe store, right? I may open another, Payless shoes, as part of a franchise. That's kind of a different thing. I'm really talking about, independent retail here, right? Mm-hmm. And the skill of understanding about the product, the things that we love about it, the things that we're good with it, about it, all the things that lead us to that are useful, but they are only a small piece of the overall equation of actually being a business owner for that particular topic, whatever it is. And often we assume what I see my clients assuming is that part's going to be easy enough to figure out. I mean, it's just numbers. We just do things. Every business is this, there's this big assumption like, oh yeah, that can't be that hard because it's very logical. It's, and to some degree that's true. But if you don't actually understand the business side of the business, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle because the product knowledge is actually a really small element. And so it's not about, what do we buy, but it's about understanding the quantities and when and the cash flow and all of the other things. It's not about, do I need people? It's like, can you actually get the right people doing the right thing for the right reason, and motivating them in a way that is, supportive and follows all of the rules of whatever state you happen to be in. I mean, and when you're an independent retailer, it's not like you get to have a staff of 15 where you've got your HR expert and you've got your finance expert and you've got your buying expert and you've got, that is not realistic. You are all of those people.
Right. Right. It's like I always say, right? When, before I became a service provider, right? When I was working for somebody else, like toward the end there of my career, I had people, and it was a rude awakening when I had to wake up one day and realize I was people.
Right. You are all the people. And the thing is, it's not that you're just all the people, because kind of we're like prepared for that. We're going to have to be all the people. It's that we have to be all the expert people. And most of us are not already expert people in all of the things. We usually are expert in maybe one or possibly two of the areas that we need to be expert in.
Right. And I think what you're saying, right? It's like I was prepared to be the person who had to send out the emails, like we had somebody who did that. Like I wrote the words, they sent out the email. I was prepared to be the person who had to figure out how the email marketing system automations work. I was not prepared, though, to be bookkeeper and CFO.
Right.
Right? Like I didn't know that you didn't just bring in money, pay bills, and give yourself the rest. I didn't know you were supposed to set money aside for when it's time to replace the computer. But
or pay taxes.
Yeah, or pay taxes. I mean, I just thought, the tax bill came and I don't know, you just came up with that or something. I really did not think that deeply on it. So I think that's the piece, right? And I've heard this so often. It's like I got into this because I wanted people to get good quality, product of this type, whatever this type is, in our community. There was nobody else who did it. I didn't get into this to fight with HR. I didn't get into this to respond to 1-star reviews. I didn't get into this to figure out sales tax and the difference in how I pay taxes for my online sales versus my in-person sales. And yet, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you can opt out of those things.
Very few of them you can actually opt out of. Occasionally, there's occasionally one or two you might be able to, but it's a pretty small list. And early on, at least, you're usually not at a place that you can opt out by hiring someone who is the expert, because often it's a financial issue. But the other is bringing in someone to be the expert when you don't actually know enough to know if they're doing it well is also problematic. Because I've seen that happen in a number of businesses where we've brought in a bookkeeper because I don't know about finances, so I'll just hire a bookkeeper. And once I come in, it's like, yeah, your bookkeeper's doing a really, really, really bad job. And they have no idea that they're doing a bad job because they don't know enough to know to ask the questions to know if they're doing a bad job. But as an owner, not that you have to do the bookkeeping, but you need to understand it well enough to know that you're actually getting the information, that things are happening in the way that need to happen. Right. And that's that really strange spot. And, and of course, on the other side, sometimes people get lucky and it's like, oh, I hired there and they're amazing. Well, and that's great. I love that for people, but it's still luck. Yeah. And if they leave, you're probably not going to get lucky twice. That's also been my experience. When you hire a unicorn, you usually don't find another one. Yeah.
So something that I've seen, without disclosing anything that is private or sensitive, most clients come to us because they started their business, they got in over their head somewhere, right? They were trying to learn the business as they went and realized they were like in over their head, and then they come to you or us for support. what is it like when you take all those experiences, what is it that you've seen happen when people are trying to learn that business side after they've already opened their door?
Well, it's and here's the thing. Every entrepreneur is doing that to some degree, right? And it comes down to how much other experience do you have to put into the pot, right? Some folks have a lot. Some folks don't. Some folks think they have a lot because they have very good experience in an area or in a role that they think has prepared them. And that's often where we're seeing the problem. I've worked in corporate America for a really long time. I understand how businesses work. I've been at the top level, and it's like, yeah, but were you the one actually having to manage the financials? Well, I managed a budget. Well, that's a different process than managing the cash flow of what's happening, right? And so that's where this becomes a challenge. And like I said, I'm not going to tell you that you have to know everything before you start a business, because that just isn't the way it ever works. If you did that, most people would never start. So, let's be realistic. That's just not what happens. But what we are afraid to own is all the things that we really don't know. And so we make choices, and often we're making choices based on what other people in the industry are doing. Now, it's fine if you're actually in pretty intimate conversations with those people so that you really know what they're doing, as opposed to getting the Instagram version of what they're doing, which I think is what happens a lot. It's like, oh, so-and-so's successful, they're doing this. And it's like, okay, but are they? And do you understand what their whole business model is behind it? And all of those pieces. And so it's up until a point where all of a sudden it's like, hey, I can't keep doing this. I'm exhausted. I'm running out of money. I mean, like there's some tipping point that says, I can't keep this going, but I don't want to kill it. Right? I don't want to kill the business. That is the tipping point. Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's, energy. I mean, like sometimes it's a combination of multiple things, but it's that piece that they've looked at the piece that they're good at. They've probably expanded some skills in the areas that they're not quite as good at, but are adjacent. But there's usually some skills that are just getting completely overlooked. And often that's where the root cause is, although it manifests over in the areas that they're more familiar with, because that's where they're looking. It's not that they aren't manifesting over in this other area. It's like, but I'm only looking over here, so that's the only place that I see the problems. Yeah.
Well, and it kind of reminds me, so when I was much, much younger, I worked at a newspaper that was across the street from a coffee shop. And it was a delightful coffee shop. And the owners wanted to move out of town. They wanted to move elsewhere. And so they were selling, and it was for sale for a while. And of course, everybody who worked at the paper, okay, I say everybody, maybe it was just me who worked at the paper who was there every day, right? Because me and my coffee addiction.
Yeah.
So I go in, and at one point after a few, maybe it was like 3-4 weeks, I was like, well, I haven't heard much about the sale. How's that going? And there was nobody in the shop at the time. And the owner said, I've got a lot of interested folks, but I'm trying to make sure that whoever I sell to actually has the opportunity to succeed here. And, and he went on to just share, they had a great location downtown. They were really an active part of downtown, and he wanted to see that piece continue. Like he felt like he owed it to downtown to not just sell to the highest bidder, but to sell to somebody who really had what it took. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, well, the thing is, people come in here all the time and they're like, I want to own a coffee shop. I've always wanted to own a coffee shop. He was like, it's a lot like people who want to own a bar. Right? They have all this romanticized notions. He's like, and the first question I ask is not so much, can you make a coffee drink? He's like, because that can be learned. Like, I didn't know how to make coffee drinks before I got here. He's like, but my big question is, what's your plan for January? And he goes, almost nobody who has expressed interest even understood why I would ask that question. like understood why January mattered. And they'd say, well, we'll just like put our hot drinks on special. He's like, but the thing is January is a really hard month in our business because everybody has New Year's resolutions. They want to quit coffee. They want to, quit carbs. They're in the gym. They're redirecting their money. Maybe they want to get debt free, right? And the first way they're going to get debt free is they're going to eliminate the coffee budget. He's like, there's all these things that make January, February, and March a really hard month for a coffee shop or a place like ours. And if they don't know that when they're coming in here, they're not going to last. And and I thought that was really interesting. Now, knowing what I know now, I would have asked him how long it took him to like figure that out and whether that was when he was in business already or if he knew that coming in.
Well, and it was interesting because, of course, I am not a coffee drinker by nature. And as soon as you asked the question, it was like, oh, my first thought, because I've done a lot of this, was like, oh, I bet January is a hard month. Why would it be month? And before you even had said all the things that you said, it was like, oh yeah, New Year's resolutions. People are cutting coffee. They're cutting sugar drinks. I quickly got there back to, because almost all independent retail has seasonality. It may not be obvious to an outside person. And when you're the consumer, and especially a consumer like you're like, nothing happens in January. I still buy exactly the same amount of coffee I bought in January as I bought in November. And that is the mindset shift. Is it's not a consumer perspective, it is an owner perspective. Right.
And thinking of like, I don't ever think of my favorite local coffee shops when I'm cutting back. It never occurs to me like, oh, how is Acme Coffee Company going to stay in business if I don't go in there every week? Right? I'm just making decisions based on what works for my household. And, it makes me think also, though, if you're not prepared for those sorts of things, you end up reacting.
Yes.
Rather than making intentional, thoughtful, strategic decisions. So what could you or what should you be asking yourself rather than being reactive? Like, is there a way to not be reactive?
Well, the first thing is to watch and say, what am I reacting to? Right. And then look to see, is the reaction a pattern? Right. First off, is just reacting a pattern. That's one piece. Right. But the other is looking and saying, oh, like you said, it would be a really good question to ask. Would have been a good question to ask him. Was like, how long did it take you to realize what January meant to you and your business? It can be that question that is like, oh, this is a January problem. Right. And so I now need to plan for a January problem. This is a first quarter problem. I need to plan for first quarter. The other thing it can be is, what are the things that I'm doing that are making this happen, right? If I'm a common denominator, which we always are in these things, right? Is it something that I'm doing that's making this thing happen? And then, like I said, one of the questions to ask is, where am I not looking that may be driving this thing to happen?
Okay.
Right? If you like marketing and sales, and no one ever says they like marketing and sales, but for a lot of people, that still is their first go-to thing, marketing and sales, right? Yeah. If it's marketing, if I'm always going to marketing and sales, it's like, okay, well, what if it wasn't marketing and sales? Where would it be, right? Yeah. Look at the place that you're not looking. Right. And that gets you to start thinking about, okay, what really are our issues? What are we really trying to address here? And then we can start working toward root cause instead of focusing on reacting to generally what are symptoms. Occasionally it's a root cause, but most of the time it's a symptom.
Yeah. Well, and some things that I've heard you say like over the years, right, is you can ask, what is the system that created this? Of course, oftentimes what I see is when we ask that, the answer we get is there is no system, right? Because they're so in the thick of it, they don't see anything, right? That's the big thing is the symptoms are visible. The root cause very rarely is.
Yeah.
It's like, what decision created this? I've heard you ask that. And very often the response is, well, nothing. Like, I didn't make any decisions, because they consciously didn't make any decisions, and they don't realize that reacting to things are decisions. And, the other thing,
and no decision is a decision.
Right. Exactly. No decision is a decision all by itself. And then the third thing that I've heard you say, now you don't ever ask this, you just like lead in with it because you know that they don't know, is what are the assumptions that created this? And they don't realize they made assumptions. Back to last episode or the episode before, when we're talking about the project table. You say, well, what's the assumption that makes you think the project table has to be here? They don't have an assumption. They're just like, no, it's just a fact. It's a fact that every shop like mine has to have these things. And so you're the person who has to come in and say, you're assuming all the shops that have this thing are profitable shops. I can tell you they are not, because I see under the hood of their business. You don't, and you never will, because they're not going to show it to you. Right. So I think, we can kind of move past the discussion of why owners get pulled towards symptoms, because we know that answer. It's because the symptoms are what's visible. I want you to tell me what the root cause likely is of some of these common symptoms that we see with businesses. So one is inventory. That is something that you heard time and time again at H&H, right? People felt like they had an inventory problem. What do you think that actually is?
It's because they're buying like a consumer and not like an owner. And they also have an assumption that more inventory creates more income, which is not actually true. There is a right level of inventory based on what the business will support. It's not the other way around. Everyone thinks inventory drives income, but income actually drives what level of inventory you should have. It's the other way. But back to, no one talks about this, because why would they? I mean, not that no one, I talk about it. But when I bring it up in rooms, like I was at H&H, and there was, I don't know, it was a pretty full room, 60, 70 people. And when I kind of brought that up, everyone's eyes got really big. Like, what do you mean that inventory doesn't drive income? It's like, no, income should be driving inventory. It's the other way around. Because having $100,000 of inventory in your shop when you're only selling $50,000 a year is not ever going to make it become $100,000 a year. It's not. It's never. That's not the way it works, because you're probably in a little tiny town with a little tiny market with a little, there, you may be able to raise it, but there's a point that you're not going to be able to get it to do anything beyond it. And more inventory is not what the answer is in that case. Right. So, so that's one example that we think, and it's also a cash flow issue. Inventory is also a cash flow issue. It's not, and often people aren't looking at the cash flow piece because, well, I've got 30 days to pay it. I've got 60 days. I've got 90 days. And it's like, that's not exactly the answer that we're looking at here. It's understanding when it's coming in versus when it's going out, how quickly it's turning, whole bunch of things most people have never heard about unless they've been in a retail business at the inventory level. If you've been a sales associate, you have not been in the inventory level. Right.
Okay. So what about payroll problems? What's
payroll
that
problems?
Cause?
Yeah, payroll problems can be all sorts of things. Sometimes it really is a payroll problem. It's truly overstaffing, thinking that you need to have more coverage than you have, which to some degree is in fact a payroll problem. But sometimes it's about productivity and role understanding of what's actually being done. Sometimes it's about culture, that you've got people that are not good fits. You hired for a skill, but not for a behavior and an attitude and a culture fit. So they may be very good at what they do, but there's so much friction in the environment that you're not getting, 100% value out of what you're investing in. And so back to assumptions, no one should ever have to wait in line. Well, it depends on the business. If you're at your grocery store, you really don't want to have to wait like 30 minutes in line. That's because no one, well, I mean, there's somebody, but no one really loves going grocery shopping. Like that's their passion probably. But having somebody have to wait 10 minutes while you finish helping another customer with, cutting fabric or, picking out a color or trying on a different size or, any of those things. Most people, if they're in your shop, they're in it because they love the thing that you're selling.
Yep.
And having them actually wait often increases the sale because they take time to look at someplace that they may not have looked before. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, no, we have to make sure that no one has to wait. It's like, if people were always waiting, yeah, maybe you need an additional staff person. But to have coverage just in case, that's not a good use of funds. And now we get into a cash flow issue. And, what does the business support?
Right. All right. What about customer service problems?
Customer service problems usually are not having clearly defined rules. For your staff to be able to know how to solve problems, right? So I don't know if I can give them a refund or not. Well, have established on what things you can refund, what you don't. Do you give credit? Do you go back to credit card? In some cases, there are rules within your state that you also have to follow. But for the most part, so long as you define it up front, you're going to be pretty well set. But it's when the customer doesn't know that there are a set of rules and that this is what we do and this is how we follow them. That's when you get to a customer service problem. It's usually not your people. I mean, sometimes it's your people. And if it is, then that can be a combination of payroll problem and customer service problem. And, you need to actually do the hard thing of, releasing somebody.
Right.
But a lot of times customer service is about not having very clear expectations, both of your team and of the customer. What is acceptable for the customer to do? People hear, the Nordstrom story about someone returning tires and Nordstrom has never sold tires and they still took it back. You are not frickin' Nordstrom's. You do not have their money. You do not have their, so
that has to be an urban legend. I'm Snopes.comming that one.
I've heard it lots, and it could be an urban legend. But I also could see, a company like Nordstrom's, that might be part of what they do. But you're not Nordstrom's.
Right.
Right? So you need to be really clear about what is within the scope of customer service and what is not within scope of customer service. And if anyone has a problem, so long as you can explain it reasonably well about why that's true, most people will be okay with it. Back to also, not every customer is really your customer. The person is like, me. They might be having a bad day, but if you can tell it's not that they're having a bad day, they're not your customer.
Right.
They want unlimited things that you can't provide, right? So
yeah. Okay, so moving sort of to the end here, what are the lessons that have to be learned for a retailer to be successful? So really, like, to phrase that another way, right? There are a set of lessons that you learn on your way to becoming a successful retailer running a sustainable business. And one of them that you talked about early on, right, is you've got to make that transition from customer to owner.
Yes. You have to realize that you are no longer a customer.
Yes. And so
I always say I would be really good because I'm not a good shopper. I'm a really good retail owner because I'm not actually a good shopper. I don't like shopping.
Right. You're not going to spend 2 hours and 5 gallons of gas, like trying to price compare across town. No. And most of the time I'll just decide not even to buy it. I'm just not a shopper, right? So I will think about it differently. So that mindset moving from consumer to owner is a huge thing. Huge thing. Okay. So consumer to owner, I think what you just talked about, right, is like super fan to like operator.
Right. Now the one that, I harp on all the time, but it's because I've seen it be the problem consistently again and again, is you have got to own be responsible for, and understand your financial numbers. Doesn't mean you have to do your financial numbers. You can hire a bookkeeper. I'm not saying you have to be the one to input everything. You don't have to be the one to run payroll. You need, however, to make sure you understand what's happening with payroll from a financial perspective. You need to understand what's happening with the business from a financial perspective, both the balance sheet and the income statement, not just the income statement or profit and loss. Some folks don't look at the balance sheet. Balance sheet is where you've got how much you owe people, how much people owe you. Usually that's not very much in a retail business. How much is in the bank, how much is sitting on the shelf as money that hasn't become money. We call that inventory, right? You've got to understand those numbers, know what they are, and have key ones that you should be able to rattle off if I get on a call with you. And it's one of the first things that I will always ask. I'll find a reason so it doesn't just sound random, like I'm digging into your business. But I will say, can you tell me? And I will usually ask 3 or 4 key numbers. And if they don't know, that is a giant flag for me.
Yeah.
You should always have, not every little tiny detail. That is not what I'm looking at here, but some key numbers. And most people know how much they sold. They know their top line income number. That's one. It is not the one I care about most. Right? And people say, oh, I'm not good at numbers. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at this. That is critical for a business. And like I said, every person that I have worked with has had some issue at some point around some piece of the numbers. Not always the same place, not always about the same thing, not always in the same way, but it was always about the number.
Yeah. Well, and I think, just reinforcing what you said, like without that information, you can never accurately answer the question of how does this decision affect our cash flow? How does this decision affect our profit? How does this decision affect our labor allocations? And if you can't answer those questions, then you can't answer the question of whether that decision is sustainable.
Right. Sustainability is 90% about finance.
Yeah. I mean, because I think about, if somebody comes to me, which this has been happening more this year than it has ever happened before, where I have a business owner who comes to me to ask whether they should either start running paid social ads or if they should stop running their ads. And if they're a product-based business, the first question I ask is, what's your cost of goods sold? Because I need to know the cost of goods sold on whatever they're promoting in their ads in order to tell them how successful those ads are, or in order to tell them how much they could truly afford to be spending on ads.
Right.
And how to promote that. And often they don't have an answer to that question. They don't know. They can't tell me what their most profitable product is. So then I can't even make a suggestion on what to promote via ads. Like there is so much that comes from understanding just that one piece. Like what is the cost of goods sold? What is the average that you are spending on the items that you are bringing into the store? Right.
And that was something we had with one of our clients a while back. And when she's like, well, my ads person says we're doing really well. We're making 3x on what we're investing. And it was like, you are not making 3x on what you're investing. You may invest $100 and sell $300, but that's not making 3x because your product costs you over $150. So on $100, you're making $125 or $140. And I'm not sure investing $100 to get 40 additional dollars is a good return on investment for an ad. And that was like math that never had occurred to her.
Right.
Right. And obviously I brought you in on the conversation, which I know made you way more aware of this, because service-based businesses technically don't have a cost of goods in the same way. So when someone says, oh yeah, you sold $300 of courses, It's like, okay, well, that probably was a good return on $100 for ads. Not the same for a physical product.
Right. It's just not. So inventory is not the problem, right? Payroll is not the problem. Customer service isn't the problem. What you have pretty much spent the last 25-ish minutes telling us is that the actual problem is knowing how to make decisions as a business owner and being willing to make decisions as a business owner.
Yeah, because I say this often to my clients. It's like, if it was easy, everyone would do it. The reason not everyone is a business owner is because it's actually hard. There's some complication to it, some difficulty from that standpoint, but it also means that we have to make hard decisions, which means someone we really like, we need to let go because they're not performing at the level that they need to perform, or that they're causing friction, or they're doing, or the person who actually got us to this place now no longer is a fit. That's a hard decision. Sometimes it's like, oh, I really love this product, but it's like, but I also know my customers aren't really going to buy it. So I have to choose not to invest in that product, right? I mean, the hard decisions is true. And like I said, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Right. And I think that is, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And if it was just about the money, I think that is really to put a bow around this entire series. Independent retailers aren't in it just for the money, because if you were in the business just for the money, you would realize very quickly there are so many easier ways to make this amount of money.
Or a lot more.
Yeah. You're in it because you have a passion, but your passion doesn't override the necessity to understand these fundamental business principles. Would you add anything else?
No, that is the perfect little bow for that.
All right. Well, if you've been listening to this series and you found yourself thinking, I don't wanna, then maybe what you need to do is just talk to Gwen, because she will gently and patiently hold space for your tantrum. Trust me, I throw tantrums with her all the time, and she puts up with me. Because the thing is you are working hard enough. I think that's why we throw tantrums, because we're like, but I'm already working as hard as I possibly can. And working harder isn't the solution. It's figuring out how to work smarter. And working smarter oftentimes comes with understanding what are the right questions to be asking yourself that will move you out of reaction mode into a much more proactive strategic mode. And it all begins by correctly identifying the problem that you need to be solving that is leading you to want to tear out your hair and stomp your feet. And in order to do that best, get some outside perspective, talk to Gwen. You can schedule a clarity call at Everyday Effectiveness/clarity. Get on Gwen's calendar, take about 20-30 minutes, and she'll help you out. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.